The rain fell like bullets against the windows of Brew and Dreams coffee shop, and Jasmine Chen was having the worst day of her entire 26 years of existence. Her laptop screen displayed the dreaded words that every freelancer fears most: payment declined. Her last client had just refused to pay for 3 weeks of design work, claiming her modern logo concept was too creative for their traditional law firm. Jasmine stared at her bank balance. It showed exactly $43.17. Rent was due in 5 days, her student loans were breathing down her neck like hungry wolves, and her roommate had already threatened to find someone more financially stable to split the bills. She took a sip of her third cup of coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu, and wondered if maybe her mother had been right about pursuing a stable career. Instead of chasing artistic dreams, her phone buzzed with another rejection email. Thank you for your submission, but we've decided to go with a more experienced candidate. Jasmine buried her face in her hands, fighting back tears of frustration. Around her, the coffee shop hummed with the conversations of people who seemed to have their lives figured out: business executives in expensive suits, students with trust funds, couples planning weekend getaways without checking their bank. Accounts first. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the glass like an impatient customer, demanding attention. Jasmine pulled out her sketch pad, the one item she never left home without, and began drawing the faces around her. Art had always been her escape, her way of making sense of a world that often felt too harsh and unforgiving. Her pencil moved across the paper, capturing the worry lines of a businessman on his phone, the gentle smile of an elderly woman reading a romance novel, the determined expression of a young mother juggling a toddler and a laptop. Just as she was getting lost in her work, disaster struck. A man in an expensive navy suit rushed through the door, shaking off rain and talking loudly into his Bluetooth headset. He collided directly with Jasmine's table, sending her coffee flying in a perfect arc that landed squarely on his pristine white shirt and silk tie. The collision of two worlds. Are you absolutely insane? The man shouted, staring down at his ruined clothes with the kind of horror usually reserved for natural disasters. His voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. This shirt costs more than most people make in a week. Jasmine scrambled to grab napkins, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. I'm so sorry. I'm really, really sorry. You bumped into my table, but still. I should have been more careful with my cup placement and stop talking, he commanded, holding up one manicured hand. Just stop. Do you have any idea who I am? The entire coffee shop had gone silent, all eyes focused on their dramatic encounter. Jasmine looked up at him properly for the first time and felt her breath catch. He was tall, probably in his early 30s, with sharp cheekbones and intense dark eyes that seemed to analyze everything they saw. His hair was perfectly styled despite the rain, and even soaked in coffee, he radiated the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. No, Jasmine said honestly, but you seem like someone who's used to getting your way, which must make this extra frustrating for you. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. Most people either recognized him immediately or cowered when he displayed his displeasure. This petite woman with paint-stained fingers and mismatched earrings was looking at him like he was just another cranky customer having a bad day. I'm Nathaniel Winters, he said, expecting recognition. When her face remained blank, he added, CEO of Winters Tech Corporation. Perhaps you've heard of it, since we basically run half the internet.
Oh.
Jasmine tilted her head thoughtfully. The company that laid off 3,000 employees last month to boost profits? Nathaniel's jaw tightened. That was a necessary business decision to ensure long-term sustainability and shareholder value. Right, Jasmine nodded, continuing to dab at his shirt with napkins. I'm sure those 3,000 families really appreciate the long-term thinking. While they're figuring out how to pay for groceries, the silence in the coffee shop became even more profound. Nobody spoke to Nathaniel Winters like that. Ever. He was known throughout the business world for his brilliant mind and ruthless efficiency, but also for his complete lack of patience with people who wasted his time or challenged his decisions. The unexpected invitation, Nathaniel studied this unusual woman who seemed utterly unimpressed by his status and wealth. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun held together with what appeared to be a paintbrush, and her clothes looked like she'd raided a thrift store with her eyes closed. Yet there was something compelling about her directness, her complete lack of fear in the face of his obvious displeasure. "You know what?" he said slowly. "You're coming with me." Jasmine stopped dabbing and looked up at him with genuine confusion. "Excuse me? I'm not going anywhere with you? I don't even know you. And frankly, you seem like the type of person who probably has people disappeared when they inconvenience you." Despite himself, Nathaniel felt the corner of his mouth twitch with something that might have been amusement. "I'm going to a board meeting in 20 minutes. The most important presentation of the quarter. Thanks to you, I look like I've been attacked by a coffee shop." "Again, really sorry about that," Jasmine said, gathering her sketches and shoving them into her worn messenger bag. "But I fail to see how that's my problem to solve. You could go home and change or buy a new shirt, or just tell people you're starting a new fashion trend. Coffee stains are very authentic and relatable." Nathaniel's phone rang, and he glanced at the screen with visible irritation. "I don't have time to go home. The investors are already in the building, in this meeting. Determines whether we secure the biggest partnership in the company's history." Something in his voice made Jasmine pause. Beneath the arrogance and entitlement, she heard a note of genuine stress. Despite his obvious wealth and power, he was human enough to worry about important moments in his career. "Look," she said, surprising herself with her next words, "there's a dry cleaner 2 blocks from here. They do emergency services for executives. I know because I designed their new logo last month. We could get you cleaned up and still make your meeting." Nathaniel stared at her for a long moment. "Why would you help me? I was rude to you, and you clearly don't approve of my business practices." Jasmine shrugged. "Because everyone deserves not to look ridiculous during important moments, even billionaire CEOs with questionable moral compasses." The race against time 20 minutes later. They were racing through the marble lobby of Winters Tech Corporation, Nathaniel's shirt and tie restored to pristine condition thanks to the world's most efficient dry cleaning operation. Jasmine had insisted on paying for the service despite Nathaniel's protests, using the last of her coffee money with a stubbornness that both frustrated and impressed him. "You really don't have to come up," Nathaniel said as they stepped into the elevator. "I can handle it from here. Are you kidding?" Jasmine grinned, pressing the button for the 42nd floor. "I've never been inside a corporate empire before. This is like getting a backstage pass to capitalism." The elevator rose smoothly, and Jasmine watched the city shrink below them through the glass walls. Lived in this city her entire life, but had never seen it from this perspective, literally and figuratively. Everything looked smaller and more manageable from up here, as if the problems that seemed overwhelming at street level were just minor details in a much larger picture. "Can I ask you something?" Nathaniel said, breaking the comfortable silence. "Shoot, why aren't you intimidated by any of this?" "Most people who walk into this building are either trying to impress me or terrified of saying the wrong thing." Jasmine considered the question seriously. "I guess because I've got nothing to lose. When you're already at the bottom, there's a certain freedom in knowing things can't get much worse. Plus, you're just a person. Rich and powerful, sure, but still. A person who spills coffee and worries about important meetings like everyone else." The elevator chimed as they reached the executive floor, and Nathaniel felt something shift inside his chest. When was the last time someone had seen him as just a person rather than a business opportunity or a threat to be managed? The boardroom. Surprised, the boardroom was filled with serious men and women in expensive suits, all speaking in the kind of hushed tones that suggested very important matters were being discussed. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The conference table looked like it could seat a small country's diplomatic delegation. Nathaniel called out a silver-haired man at the head of the table. "We were beginning to worry, is everything prepared for the Harrison Industries presentation?" "Absolutely, Richard," Nathaniel replied smoothly, taking his seat. "Everything is under control." Jasmine hung back by the door, suddenly aware that she was completely out of place in this temple of corporate power. Her thrift store clothes and paint-stained fingers seemed even more obvious, surrounded by all this polished perfection. "And who is this?" asked a woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that looked expensive. "This is..." Nathaniel hesitated, realizing he didn't even know her last name. "This is Jasmine. She's consulting on the creative aspects of our presentation." Jasmine shot him a look that clearly said, "What are you doing?" But before she could protest, Richard was gesturing for her to take a seat. "Excellent." Richard nodded approvingly. Fresh perspective is exactly what we need. Harrison Industries is known for their innovative approach to technology partnerships. They'll want to see that we can think outside traditional corporate structures. As the presentation began, Jasmine found herself drawn into the discussion despite her complete lack of business training. The executives spoke about market penetration and synergistic opportunities, but she could see the human story underneath all the corporate jargon. This wasn't just about numbers and profits. It was about creating something that would change how people connected with technology in their daily lives. When Nathaniel pulled up a series of charts and graphs, showing projected revenue streams, Jasmine couldn't help but notice how lifeless and disconnected the data seemed from the actual human impact of their products. The accidental genius, excuse me, Jasmine said, raising her hand like she was back in school.
Oh.
The entire room turned to look at her, and she felt a moment of panic before pushing forward. I know I'm not supposed to be talking, but I have a question about your user engagement strategy. Nathaniel's eyes widened in warning, but Richard leaned forward with interest. Please, go ahead, Jasmine said, pulling out her sketch pad. You've got all these beautiful numbers about how many people use your platforms, but what do you know about why they use them? Like, what makes someone choose your social media app over all the others when they're lying in bed at 3 a.m, unable to sleep because they're worried about their job or their relationships or their kids? The room fell silent. These were not the kinds of questions typically asked in board meetings. I mean, Jasmine continued, flipping through her sketches. When I was drawing people in the coffee shop earlier, I noticed that everyone was looking for connection. On his phone wasn't just making deals, he was trying to reach his daughter before her soccer game. The elderly woman reading wasn't just passing time, she was escaping into a world where love stories have happy endings. She stood up and moved to the whiteboard, grabbing a marker before anyone could stop her. What if instead of thinking about users as data points, you thought about them as complete human beings with hopes and fears and dreams? As she spoke, Jasmine began sketching simple figures on the board, not corporate flowcharts, but actual people in real situations. A parent trying to video chat with their child during a business trip, a student using technology to stay connected with friends during a difficult time, an elderly person learning to navigate social media to see pictures of their grandchildren. Technology isn't really about the technology, she said, warming to her theme. It's about making human connections possible when geography or circumstances or life gets in the way. Your platform could be the bridge that brings families together, helps lonely people find community, gives creative people a way to share their art with the world. The room remained silent, but now it was the kind of silence that comes when people are truly listening rather than just waiting for their turn to speak. The moment everything changed, Richard exchanged glances with the other board members. Then, looked back at Jasmine with genuine curiosity. These are fascinating insights. Do you have formal training in consumer psychology or market research? Jasmine laughed, a sound that seemed to lighten the entire atmosphere of the room. No, I barely made it through community college. I'm just a freelance graphic designer who spends a lot of time in coffee shops watching people and trying to figure out what makes them happy or sad. And yet, said the blonde woman, you've just articulated something our entire marketing department has been struggling to define for months. Nathaniel stared at Jasmine with a mixture of amazement and something else he couldn't quite identify. In 5 minutes of improvised commentary, she had managed to reframe their entire approach to the Harrison Industries partnership. She had taken cold corporate strategy and infused it with warmth, humanity, and genuine insight into what people actually wanted from technology. I think, Richard said slowly, we need to completely revise our presentation approach.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you be willing to help us develop this human-centered perspective for the Harrison meeting next week? Jasmine looked around the room, suddenly aware that everyone was staring at her expectantly. I don't know anything about corporate presentations or business strategy or any of this stuff. You know about people, Nathaniel said quietly, and apparently that's exactly what we've been missing. As the meeting continued, Jasmine found herself appointed as a temporary creative consultant, tasked with helping the executive team understand their users as human beings rather than revenue streams. It was the strangest job interview she'd never applied for, conducted in front of people whose net worth exceeded her lifetime earning potential. When the meeting finally ended and the executives filed out, Nathaniel stood alone with Nathanielin. The empty boardroom, both of them staring at the whiteboard covered with her sketches of real people living real lives. "I can't believe I just did that," Jasmine said softly. "I can't believe it either," Nathaniel replied. "But I think you just saved our partnership with Harrison Industries." Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sparkled in the afternoon sun, and for the first time in months, Jasmine felt like maybe the universe had finally decided to stop testing her, start offering her opportunities instead. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made everything feel possible. Jasmine stood outside the towering glass building of Winters Tech Corporation, clutching a thermos of homemade coffee and wearing her best attempt at professional attire, a navy blazer from a thrift store, dark jeans without any paint stains, and the only pair of closed-toe shoes she owned that didn't have holes in them. The security guard at the front desk looked her up and down with obvious skepticism. When she announced she was there to see Nathaniel Winters, name again? Jasmine. Chen. I'm the new creative consultant. The title still felt foreign on her tongue, like wearing clothes that belonged to someone else. After several phone calls and suspicious glances, she was finally escorted to the 42nd floor, where a perfectly groomed assistant with glacier blue eyes and a smile that could cut glass was waiting for her. "Miss Chen, I'm Patricia Hamilton, Mr. Winters' executive assistant. I must say your appointment came as quite a surprise to all of us." Patricia's tone suggested that surprises were not welcome in the carefully orchestrated world of executive operations. Jasmine followed Patricia through a maze of glass offices and open workspace areas where people in expensive clothes typed furiously on sleek computers and spoke in hushed, urgent tones about things like quarterly projections and market disruption strategies. "Your workspace," Patricia announced, gesturing to a small desk positioned directly outside Nathaniel's corner office. Through the glass walls, Jasmine could see him on a conference call, his expression intense as he gestured at charts displayed on multiple monitors. The desk was pristine and empty, except for a high-end computer, a leather-bound notebook, and a small placard that read, "Jasmine Chen, creative consultant." Seeing her name in elegant lettering made the whole situation feel more real and terrifying. Learning the language of power, Jasmine's first week at Winters Tech was like being dropped into a foreign country where everyone spoke the same language, but she couldn't understand a word. Acronyms flew through the air like confetti. ROI, KP is B2B. SAS, and every conversation seemed to be conducted in a code designed to exclude anyone who hadn't spent years learning the secret handshakes of corporate culture. But while Jasmine struggled with the language of business, she excelled at the language of people. She noticed that Marcus, the junior developer who always ate lunch alone, lit up when anyone asked about his weekend hiking adventures. She saw that Linda from accounting kept a photo of her rescue dogs on her desk and smiled whenever anyone mentioned pets. She observed that the cleaning crew worked invisible shifts, arriving after everyone left and departing before anyone arrived, maintaining the pristine corporate environment without any acknowledgement. Nathaniel watched her navigate his company with a mixture of fascination and confusion. She treated the CEO and the mailroom clerk with exactly the same warmth and respect. She remembered everyone's names within days, and somehow knew that Trevor from IT was worried about his mother's surgery, and that Jennifer from marketing was secretly writing a novel during her lunch breaks. "How do you do that?" Nathaniel asked her on Thursday afternoon. They were reviewing market research data for the Harrison Industries presentation, but he found himself more interested in watching her interact with his employees than in analyzing consumer behavior patterns. Do what? Jasmine looked up from the stack of surveys she'd been reading, her reading glasses slightly crooked and a pencil stuck behind one ear. "Make everyone feel like they matter. My employees have worked here for years, and I couldn't tell you half their names or anything about their personal lives." Jasmine set down the papers and really looked at him. "That's because you see them as functions instead of people. Marcus isn't just the developer. He's a guy who spends his weekends climbing mountains because it makes him feel free. Linda isn't just accounting. She's someone who rescues animals because she believes every living thing deserves love and care. But how does knowing that make me a better CEO? Because happy people do better work. People who feel valued and seen don't just show up for a paycheck. They invest their creativity and passion in what they're building. When you know that Trevor is distracted because he's worried about his mom, you can offer flexibility or support instead of wondering why his productivity is down. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, studying her with the same intensity he usually reserved for market analysis. You're suggesting I manage with emotions instead of metrics, suggesting you manage with both. Numbers tell you what's happening, but emotions tell you why. And understanding why is how you figure out what to do next. The Harrison Industries presentation? The day of the Harrison Industries presentation arrived with all the tension of a championship game. The executive conference room had been transformed into a showcase, with pristine presentation materials, catered refreshments, and enough technology to run a small space program. Harrison Industries was represented by their CEO, Catherine Harrison, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and intelligent eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they encountered. She was accompanied by her chief technology officer and head of partnerships, both of whom had reputations for asking the kinds of questions that could destroy unprepared presenters. Ms. Harrison, Nathaniel began, "Thank you for considering Winters Tech as your technology integration partner. Today, we want to show you not just what we can build, but why it matters." Instead of starting with the usual slides full of technical specifications and revenue projections, Jasmine had convinced the team to begin with stories. Real stories about real people whose lives had been changed by technology that prioritized human connection over impressive features. "Let me tell you about David," Jasmine said, standing beside a large monitor that displayed a simple sketch of a man in a hospital bed. David is 73 years old, and he's been in the ICU for 2 weeks. His granddaughter Emma is 8 years old and lives 3,000 miles away. Before a video calling platform added the Storytime feature, Emma was terrified to talk to her grandfather because the hospital made him look different and scary. The room was completely silent as Jasmine continued. But when we added virtual backgrounds that could transport them to Emma's favorite fairy tale settings, suddenly Grandpa David wasn't sick in a hospital. He was reading stories in enchanted forests and magical castles. Technology didn't just connect them, it gave them a way to create new memories even during the hardest time in their lives. Catherine Harrison leaned forward, her expression shifting from polite interest to genuine engagement.
How many families
"Have you used this feature?" "Over 2 million in the first 6 months," Nathaniel replied. "But more importantly, we've received thousands of messages from families telling us these connections help them maintain relationships that might have been damaged by distance or difficult circumstances." The presentation continued with more stories, each one supported by data, but grounded in human experience. They talked about teenagers using creativity tools to express themselves safely, elderly people finding community through shared interest, groups and small business owners building customer relationships that felt personal even in digital spaces. When they finished, Catherine Harrison sat quietly for a long moment before speaking. "In 30 years of business partnerships, I've never seen market research presented through the lens of human impact. You've shown us not just what your technology can do, but what it can mean." The partnership agreement was signed that afternoon. The office transformation over the following weeks, something remarkable began happening at Winters Tech Corporation. Jasmine's influence spread through the company like ripples in a pond, touching everything from employee morale to creative problem-solving approaches. She instituted coffee break stories, 15-minute sessions where employees could share something interesting about their lives or work. She created humanity boards in each department where people could post photos, drawings, quotes, or anything that reminded them why their work mattered to real people. Nathaniel watched the transformation with amazement. Productivity increased. Not because people were working harder, but because they were working with more purpose and creativity. Collaboration improved as employees began seeing their colleagues as complete human beings rather than job titles. Even customer satisfaction scores improved as the company's renewed focus on human connection translated into better products and services. "You've changed everything," Nathaniel told Jasmine one evening as they walked through the office together. Most employees had gone home, but the spaces still hummed with the energy of people who enjoyed coming to work. "I haven't changed anything," Jasmine replied. "I just help people remember what was already there." Everyone wants to feel like their work matters, like they're part of something bigger than themselves. Your employees are brilliant and talented. They just needed permission to bring their whole selves to work instead of hiding behind corporate personas, They stopped in front of the large windows overlooking the city, and Nathaniel found himself seeing the lights below differently than he had before. Each light represented families, dreams, struggles, hopes, real people living real lives, not just potential customers or market segments. "Jasmine," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." She turned to look at him, and in the soft glow of the city lights, she looked beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with perfect makeup or expensive clothes. Her beauty came from her genuine care for others, her ability to find humor in difficult situations, and her unwavering belief that everyone deserved to be seen and valued. "I've spent my entire career building walls between myself and everyone else. I thought that distance was necessary for leadership, that caring about people would make me weak or compromise my judgment. But watching you these past weeks has shown me that the opposite is true. Connection doesn't make you vulnerable, it makes you strong." Jasmine's heart began beating faster, but she didn't interrupt. She could see something shifting in Nathaniel's usually controlled expression, a vulnerability she'd never witnessed before. "What I'm trying to say is that somewhere between the coffee shop disaster and tonight, I've fallen completely in love with you. It's not just because you're brilliant or because you've transformed my company, but because you've helped me remember what it feels like to be human." The words hung in the air between them, honest and unguarded. Jasmine felt tears prick her eyes. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that this man, who had seemed so unreachable and cold when she first met him, was offering. Hurt his heart with the same courage she'd shown when she first spoke up in that boardroom. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "I love you too. I love your brilliant mind and your hidden kindness and the way you're brave enough to change when you realize you want to be better." When he kissed her, soft and gentle against the backdrop of the glittering city, it felt like coming home to a place she'd never known she was searching for. 3 months into their romance, Jasmine and Nathaniel had settled into a rhythm that felt both natural and revolutionary. Mornings began with coffee and newspaper reading in Nathaniel's penthouse apartment, where Jasmine had gradually added color and warmth to his minimalist decor. Evenings often ended with them working side by side, he on business strategy, she on creative projects that had evolved far beyond her original consulting role, but their happiness existed in a bubble that couldn't remain isolated from the realities of corporate politics and social expectations forever. The first crack in their perfect world came. During the quarterly board meeting, Jasmine had been invited to present her Human Impact Initiative, a program that trained all department heads to consider the real-world effects of their decisions on both employees and customers. The presentation had gone well, with board members nodding approvingly at improved satisfaction scores and increased productivity metrics. But after Jasmine left the room, the tone changed dramatically. "Nathaniel," Richard Blackstone said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had helped build the company from its early days, "we need to discuss the unconventional direction the company has taken recently." "I'm not sure what you mean," Nathaniel replied, though the tension in his shoulders suggested he knew exactly what was coming. Victoria Sterling, the board's longest-serving member, leaned forward with the expression of someone delivering difficult but necessary medicine. "Your relationship with Miss Chen has created complications that extend beyond personal matters. While her contributions have been interesting, there are concerns about propriety, professional boundaries, and the message we're sending to shareholders." "What message would that be?" Nathaniel's voice remained calm, but everyone in the room could feel the temperature drop several degrees. "That business decisions are being influenced by romantic entanglements rather than sound corporate strategy," Richard said bluntly. "Our investors expect leadership that prioritizes fiduciary responsibility over personal relationships." Margaret Thornton, the newest board member, added, "There's also the matter of Ms. Chen's background. Our shareholders and partners expect a certain level of pedigree in executive-level positions. Someone with appropriate education, experience, and social standing." Nathaniel stood slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to cold fury. "You suggesting that my personal life is your business? Or that Jasmine's value as a contributor to this company should be measured by her family's bank account rather than her results? Or suggesting?" Victoria replied evenly that appearances matter in business. Perception shapes reality in the corporate world. Right now, the perception is that you've allowed emotional involvement to cloud your professional judgment. The numbers suggest otherwise, Nathaniel said icily. Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high. Customer retention has improved by 37%. Revenue is up 28% from last quarter. If that's clouded judgment, perhaps I should make more emotionally driven decisions. Richard sighed. Nathaniel, you're brilliant, and you've done incredible things for this company. But brilliant. Men have been brought down by inappropriate relationships before. We're trying to protect you and the company from potential scandal or legal complications. What are you asking me to do? The board members exchanged glances before Victoria spoke. We're asking you to choose your relationship with Ms. Chen or your position as CEO. The board has already discussed this extensively. We're prepared to vote if necessary. The impossible choice that night. Nathaniel sat in his apartment staring out at the city lights, a glass of untouched wine growing warm in his hands. Jasmine was curled up on the couch nearby, working on designs for a new employee wellness program, completely unaware that their world was about to explode. You're awfully quiet tonight, she said, looking up from her laptop. Everything okay? Nathaniel turned to look at her, hair twisted up in a messy bun, wearing one of his shirts over paint-splattered leggings. Glasses sliding down her nose as she concentrated on her work. She looked beautiful and brilliant and completely at home in his space and his life. The thought of losing her felt like contemplating amputation. But the thought of losing his company, the work he'd dedicated his entire adult life to building, felt equally devastating. The board wants you gone, he said quietly. Jasmine's hands stilled on the keyboard. What do you mean? They think our relationship compromises my judgment. They've given me an ultimatum. Choose between you and my position as CEO. The laptop slid off Jasmine's knees as she turned to face him fully. What did you tell them? I told them they were wrong. I told them our relationship has made me a better leader, not a worse one. I told them the results speak for themselves. But they don't care about results. No, they care about appearances and maintaining the status quo and protecting themselves from anything that looks different or challenging. Jasmine was quiet for a long moment, and Nathaniel could almost see her brilliant mind working through the implications. So what happens now? I don't know. If I choose you, I lose the company I've spent 15 years building. If I choose the company. He couldn't finish the sentence. If you choose the company, you lose me, Jasmine said softly. But Nathaniel, you also lose yourself. The person you've become over these past months, the leader who cares about his employees, his people, who makes decisions based on human impact as well as profit margins. That person doesn't exist without everything you've learned about connection and empathy. So what are you saying? Jasmine stood and moved to the window beside him, both of them looking out at the city that had brought them together. I'm saying that maybe this isn't about choosing between love and career. Maybe it's about choosing between who you used to be and who you want to become. The corporate rebellion. The next morning, Nathaniel called an emergency meeting with the entire executive team. Word spread quickly through the company that something significant was happening, and the usual hum of productivity was replaced by nervous whispers and speculation. I have an announcement, Nathaniel began. Standing at the head of the conference table, surrounded by vice presidents, department heads, and senior managers. Yesterday, the board of directors asked me to choose between my relationship with Jasmine Chen and my position as CEO of this company. The room erupted in surprised murmurs and shocked expressions. Jasmine, who had been asked to attend the meeting, felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. They suggested that my personal relationship compromises my professional judgment, and that the company's recent changes in culture and strategy represent a dangerous departure from sound business practices. Marcus from IT raised his hand tentatively. Sir, are you resigning? Nathaniel smiled, and for the first time in months, was the genuine smile that Jasmine had taught him instead of the corporate mask he used to wear. No, Marcus. I'm not resigning. Instead, I'm proposing something radical. He moved to the whiteboard and began writing. For the past 3 months, this company has operated on principles of human-centered leadership. We've prioritized employee well-being alongside profit margins. We've made decisions based on long-term relationship building rather than short-term gains. And the results have been extraordinary. Linda from accounting spoke up. The board doesn't see it that way. The board sees it as a threat to traditional corporate structure. They believe that caring about employees and customers as people rather than just resources and revenue streams makes us weak or unfocused. Jennifer from marketing leaned forward. But we've never been more focused. I've never been more excited. About coming to work or more proud of what we're building? Exactly, Nathaniel said. Which is why I'm proposing that we buy the company ourselves. The silence that followed was profound. An employee-owned cooperative. Trevor from it asked, his voice filled with wonder. We could actually do that? It would be complex and expensive and risky, Nathaniel admitted. We'd need to secure funding, negotiate buyout terms, and completely restructure our business model. But it would also mean that the people who actually do the work of building and maintaining and improving our products would have a say in how the company operates. Sarah from customer service raised her hand. What about you and Jasmine? Would you still lead the company? Nathaniel looked at Jasmine, who was staring at him with an expression of amazement and love and terror. If the employee owners want me to continue as CEO, and if they want Jasmine to continue developing our human-centered initiatives, then yes. But those decisions would belong to all of us, not to a board of directors who see employees as expendable and emotions as weaknesses. The room buzzed with excitement and nervousness as people began to grasp the magnitude of what Nathaniel was proposing. It wasn't just a business restructure, it was a complete revolution in how they thought about work. Ownership and corporate responsibility. The next 6 weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations, financial planning, and emotional roller coasters. Nathaniel had underestimated how viciously the board would fight to maintain control of the company. They threatened lawsuits, attempted to freeze assets, and launched a public relations campaign designed to portray the buyout attempt as reckless and financially irresponsible. Local business media picked up the story. And suddenly, Jasmine found herself in the strange position of being a public figure. Articles appeared with headlines like "The Coffee Shop Girl Who Stole," "A CEO's Heart and Love versus Profit," a corporate romance that could change everything. Most of the coverage was sensationalized and missed the real story. But a few journalists understood what was actually happening. They wrote about employees who were willing to invest their savings in a company they believed in, about customers who supported the buyout because they wanted to work with businesses that valued human relationships, and about the growing movement toward corporate structures that prioritize community and sustainability over maximum profit extraction. The breakthrough came when Catherine Harrison from Harrison Industries publicly announced her company's support for the employee buyout. Winters Tech has shown us what's possible when businesses prioritize human connection and employee well-being. She said in a press conference that was covered by major business networks, "We're proud to partner with a company that's brave enough to put its values ahead of traditional corporate expectations." As other clients and partners followed Harrison Industries' lead. A crowdfunding campaign launched by enthusiastic customers raised over $2 million in support of the buyout. Technology industry leaders who had been quietly questioning traditional corporate hierarchies began speaking publicly about the need for new business models. But the real turning point came when employees began making personal sacrifices to make the buyout possible. Marcus mortgaged his house to invest in the company. Linda cashed in her retirement savings. Jennifer sold her car and started taking public transportation. Trevor moved back in with his parents so he could put his rent money toward the cause. "Can't let you all risk everything for this," Nathaniel told the assembled group of employees who had gathered in the main conference room to discuss final buyout terms. "You're not letting us do anything," Marcus replied. "We're choosing to do this because we believe in what we're building together." "But if it fails," Linda interrupted, "we'll fail together as a community that tried to create something better. But if we don't try, we'll definitely fail as individuals working for people who see us as replaceable resources." The new beginning, on a crisp December morning, exactly 1 year after Jasmine had spilled coffee on Nathaniel's shirt, employees of Winters Tech Corporation officially became the employee owners of Harmony Technologies Cooperative. The name change had been Jasmine's suggestion, a reflection of their commitment to creating harmony between profit and purpose, individual success, and community well-being. The celebration party was held in the main office space, which had been transformed with decorations created by employees and their families. Children drew pictures of what their parents did at work. Spouses shared stories about how the company's focus on work-life balance had improved their family relationships. Even pets were invited, turning the normally sterile corporate environment into a joyful community gathering. Nathaniel, who had been unanimously re-elected as CEO by the employee owners, stood to address the crowd. 1 year ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. It meant working 80-hour weeks, making decisions based purely on financial metrics, and maintaining professional distance from everyone around me. He paused to look at Jasmine, who was standing near the front of the crowd wearing a dress the color of autumn leaves and a smile that could power the entire building. But this incredible woman taught me that real success means building something that makes people's lives better, not just our customers' lives, but our own lives and our families' lives and our community's life. The crowd applauded, and Jasmine felt tears of happiness prick her eyes. Today marks the beginning of something unprecedented in the business world, Nathaniel continued. A technology company owned and operated by the people who actually create the technology. A workplace where human well-being and financial success aren't competing priorities but complementary goals. A business that proves you can be profitable without sacrificing your values or treating people as expendable resources. As the celebration continued around them, Nathaniel and Jasmine found themselves standing together near the large windows, overlooking the city, the same view that had witnessed their first real conversation about humanity and business. Their first kiss, and countless late-night planning sessions for the company transformation. So, Jasmine said, leaning against Nathaniel's shoulder, what happens next? Nathaniel wrapped his arms around her, marveling at how natural it felt to hold her close in the space where he had once been so isolated and guarded. Next, we prove that love for each other, for our work, for our community really can conquer all the traditional barriers that keep people separated and struggling. Think we can do it? With you? I think we can do anything. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that Jasmine would later capture in a painting, they stood together, surrounded by their chosen family of colleagues and friends, looking forward to a future they were building together, one decision, one relationship, one act of love at a time. The coffee shop girl and the billionaire CEO had become partners in the truest sense, not just in romance, but in creating a new model for how business could serve humanity instead of exploiting it. And their love story, which had begun with a simple collision and a stained shirt, had become proof that the most powerful force in the world isn't money or status or corporate hierarchy. It's the courage to see each other as complete human beings, worthy of respect, care, and infinite possibility. The end 6 months later. Harmony Technologies Cooperative was featured on the cover of Harvard Business Review as the future of corporate structure. Jasmine and Nathaniel were married in the company's rooftop garden, surrounded by their employee family and the city lights that had witnessed their entire love story. Their first child, Emma, was born 2 years later and grew up in offices, where everyone knew her name and considered her part of the community. The coffee shop where they first met now displays a small plaque that reads, "Where impossible love stories begin." And every morning, Jasmine and Nathaniel still start their day there, sharing coffee and dreams and the kind of partnership that changes the world one relationship at a time.